Hello there, and welcome to a new video for Age of Wonders 4. In this one, I got 10 tips and tricks for the Barbarian culture. It's all about things that are innate to this culture, so you don't need to add any tomes or anything. I will talk all about things that you have when you just play that culture, so if you want to build a new faction, I hope these things will come in handy for you. So let's get started with number one. I want to talk about your scouts, because you got amazing scouts with the Barbarians. You got outpost building scouts. So basically, each of your scouts is a mini hero able to just build stuff wherever you want to. You can build cities in remote locations with nobody ever noticing. You can claim provinces that you just want to have because you want to have them. You can do so much stuff with that alone that I really love this feature so much about this faction. Just keep in mind that while outposts don't count into your city number cap, they do cost quite a nice amount of gold. You do get the income of the province there though, so if you want to grab something, you can also build a work camp to just grab another province. There's cool stuff that you can do with these guys. Use it. Number two, I want to talk about the high damage of the Barbarian faction that you probably expected, and where it comes from, and how it works. So, you got access to the Primal Strike trait, which adds in a +8 damage to the first blow of a melee attack. That means your units have a really strong alpha strike. It's pretty cool that you got 2 melee units on your roster on tier 1, so it adds up to a nice oomph there. Spell-wise, we got really cool tools here too. Song of the Reckless lets one of your units go Berserk and makes it 30% stronger. Berserk makes the unit uncontrollable, makes it attack friend and foe alike, but it's, for one, immune against moral effects, but more importantly, it ignores casualty penalties. Slap that on an almost dead unit, bam, your hand deal full damage one more time. It's pretty nasty. If you utilize it well, you can get so much more bang out of a already dead unit that it requires some timing. Very powerful spell nevertheless. Vision of Victory is way more straightforward. It just gives you a 30% more higher crit chance. That's very useful because it just requires no more explanation, I must say. On top of that, you have access to very hard-hitting units. I'm going to explain the roster a little bit deeper in detail alongside of this video. It's just worth noting that you have a lot of mechanics going on that improve your damage besides those powerful units that I'm going to explain next in a few points. The next thing on point 3 I want to talk about is the Ritual of Alacrity. Ritual of Alacrity can be used in any city and outpost of yours, and it restores HP of an army, but more importantly, it also restores the freaking move points of your army. So you can use your outposts as refueling stations for your army, and this is such a nasty thing to pull off, because this makes you so much more mobile than most factions if you utilize your Ritual of Alacrity stacks well. It's outright annoying how fast you can move armies with that. I haven't yet tried if you can use the Ritual of Alacrity several times in the same turn on several outposts, so feel free to leave me a comment down below if you know if that works, because I haven't found the time yet to try that out. So let's talk about number 4, the tier 1 power of the Barbarian faction. So the tier 1 roster of your faction is outright amazing. Let me explain it to you. We already went over Pathfinder, but I want to go over these guys as well. So the warrior is your shield unit. At first glance, it doesn't look like much. You have a high physical resilience, as you would expect it, coming from a pretty good base value plus shield, but the details are what matters. You have access to a shield bash. This thing stuns the enemy with a 90% chance. This is amazing because you have the permission to print a tier 1 crowd controlling unit just like that. Put these guys in the front line, stun the enemy in the front line, and enjoy a shield wall afterwards, because the best part about this thing is they go into defense mode after using that and buff up all their companions around them. On top of that, it's worth noting that the shield bash doesn't deal damage, so they are able to conserve their primal strike beyond the first turn, making these guys really nice finishers. You know, when there's only a low amount of HP left, Primal Strike can be a really cool thing to finish off a unit efficiently. In a nutshell, these guys are amazing because they got only 10 damage, that 12 is already amplified by transformations. They have a standard damage, but this spell is amazing. You will notice it when you use it, how much impact it has to have the ability to just disable part of the enemy army. But we're just starting out here. Let's get on over to the Sundara. It's the only skirmisher unit in the cultural roster, period. Nobody else can hire skirmishers natively. Skirmishers' passive traits are the ability to not trigger any attacks of opportunity and being able to ignore terrain effects in combat. So, in a nutshell, these guys are really good at getting into the enemy's face and stabbing them quite fiercely. The base damage of these guys is 12. That's 2 points more than the usual tier 1 unit has, and you have to take that times 3 because ideally they can stab 3 times. Their downside is pretty clear. They have no resistances at all, but they have a ranged attack. So in the combination with your shield units, these guys are really cool. You put the warriors in front, and the Sundaras go from the backline and deal nice range damage, shaving down the enemy's defense and status resistance. The status resistance reduction comes in really, really handy because you have a poisoning unit as well, which is quite happy to have the resistance lowered in that department as well. Just keep in mind that these guys are really going down like crazy. Once they get focused, they instantaneously go down, basically. They are really good recipients for that Reckless song, though. They make really nice berserkers. In a nutshell, this combination of these 3 troops, you have a mini hero, you have a defender enabling the backliners to deal damage, and you also have sort of a shock troop that you can enable to deal horrendous amounts of damage in the backline with the costs of blowing up, but well, that's just life. So in a nutshell, you can do so much with just the tier 1 roster of these guys, which makes the backline access of the outposts even worse for the enemy to deal with. So let's get on over to number 5. That's not the goodness hasn't stopped yet. I want to talk about another amazing thing. You have a cultural ranged advantage. So that is not that obvious, but these guys are really, really good at dealing ranged damage because they have a native access to the only tier 1 archer unit that the cultural rosters have available. They don't look like much at the first glance, but they deal more damage per shot than the average archer that cultural troops have available. They have a little bit of extra resistance that other archers don't have. They have a little bit more HP that other archers don't have. In a nutshell, they are the most powerful base archer frame available for any culture that I so far have found. This is pretty cool. It's topped off with a War Shaman's ability to poison enemies. They are not the strongest ranged attackers, but they can add in some damage over time, added to some really cool buffing with regeneration and even more power-ups. So in a nutshell, you have lots of ranged attackers, 3 different ones. Add in the Pathfinder and you even have 4. And your base frames are more powerful than most cultures' base frames are. So that's something to know about. So number 6 is now about guerrilla warfare, because that's what your faction really excels at. You can do so nasty things with all the things that I mentioned already. You just set up an outpost or 2 or 3 behind the enemy lines. You transform one of them into a small city. You print cheap tier 1 units and dominate the area, and if the enemy comes to take them, they really have to come with something formidable, because if they take any half measures, you're probably easy to just stamp them down, depending on the stage of the game and your magical capabilities and all those things. You are really, really one pain to deal with in the backline. And the really coolest part is if you ever manage to get yourself into the enemy, behind the enemy lines like that, if the enemy is busy clearing you out here, the enemy is not that busy defending themselves. So diverting enemy forces is another wonderful thing that you can do with these guys. It's especially powerful against the AI, which is extremely prone against any forms of treachery and trickery. So it's really cool to use and can weigh combats that are against you into a interesting direction by just diverting the enemy forces with some guerrilla warfare. So number 7 is about forests and the barbarian culture. The barbarians love forests because they got one cool upgrade to have, the Forest of Stakes, which adds in so wonderful into the last point as well. For one, it is a building that upgrades your food and production income. It adds draft per forester, which means the more forests, the faster you print out units. But it also demoralizes the enemy, so it's the perfect upgrade for that city behind enemy lines. Basically, if you see a massive cluster of forests, it's just to pick up for you because it's basically the best part and the best thing to pick up. Foresters are also quite nice to have because they have a nice mixture of production and food, which allows you to build the city up properly while maintaining a stable growth. It's a pretty good thing, and worth noting that forest provinces are really, really the best thing about to pick up for your culture. Number 8, let's talk about the mighty Berserker. These guys are so good that I want to give them an entire point in this video. They are your culture's tier 3 unit, and they are massive. Not only are they pretty powerful shock units providing a pretty nasty upfront damage, you have to take the primal strike into that as well, they also come with an automatic trigger into Berserk Rage once they fall below 33% HP or lower. But they are better Berserkers than others because they are even named Berserkers. They have the Steadfast bonus. That means they will not die for one turn after entering this status. This is so annoying to deal with because that means these guys will get to deal damage one more time if they go low, whether you want it or not. So you have to crowd control these guys or deal with the fact that they can blow up one more time after they are already dead. Being a tier 3 unit, that means they can deal quite a nice amount of damage. They come with really solid stats over the board, and I consider them one of the strongest frames to put enchantments and other stuff on that I've seen in the game. Basically, if you manage to enchant these guys heavily, they can turn into real monsters. And since they are your culture's tier 3 unit, you can mass produce them very, very easily. They also come with the innate ability to counter retaliation strikes. They also counter the polearm users because it's a heavy charge strike, and they don't have the downside that knights or something like that have. They are unmounted. They have no innate weakness against polearm units. They are just countering the hell out of them. So Berserkers are really the best part of your entire roster, and they are very, very good recipients for enchantments and stuff into the later stages of the game. It's time to talk about the less fun things about the Barbarian factions. So number 9 is about one innate downside of your culture. You have a chronicle money problem. Yeah, you're broke when you're a barbarian because you're not wise enough to do economy. Jokes aside, you have no innate access to structures that increase money. Your culture's innate structures are yielding no money at all. There's no access to that stuff anywhere. You have access to troop building like crazy. You have access to even more bonuses on your troops the more buildings you have, but you have no such thing that brings you any income. And with an expansionistic plan, that's pretty much a problem because cities, they do cost money. Armies, they do cost money. You have a lot of tier 1 units that cost a lot of money too. You have an innate access to chaos, which means that you can fund those powerful tier 1 units more cheaply. But at the end of the day, you're still constantly broke, so you should do something about that in your build by either implementing trades, tomes, or other cultures to deal with that problem. Otherwise, your expansion might come to a halt quite quickly when you're not able to print either new troops or build new buildings in your cities. Number 10 is the last point, and I want to talk about what this culture needs for being successful in the long run. So they are crazy fast. These guys are, they have the most powerful early game I think that I've seen so far, but they don't have much innate power to carry themselves into the later stages of the game because of a glaring weakness. Your tier 1 units, they pile up quite quickly and they have low resistances. That means magical attacks rip through your army like crazy. Your War Shaman is the only unit that's resistant against magical things. Well, Berserkers too, but they're costly. But with the Sunderers and Warriors, you are extremely vulnerable against any area of effect attacks that decimate low quality units quickly, and that can be your demise if you don't pick up tomes or stuff like that to counter these things. You need a late game strategy, especially if you want to have an expansionistic victory. You will need to bring up some defensive options via tomes, because these guys, they are not exactly that well in that department on their own, but they are very, very grateful receivers for any forms of troop enhancers and economy enhancers, due to the fact that you can stamp out insane amounts of cities, and you are also able to print out a lot of units, and therefore whichever bonus or improver synergy strategy you take, it will be received gratefully by the stuff you got. But you have to pick up something, and you have to think about that at the beginning of the game. Otherwise, you will have probably quite a disappointment in the mid and late game when the other factions come automatically with amazing combos that are innate to their culture. Your best combo that you got is that one support unit that is able to heal your units and boost them up a little bit, but that's about it. Now then, that's the end of this video. I hope you enjoyed. I am currently working on advanced tips and tricks for each culture, so leave your comments down below if you have any questions or anything to add up. Meanwhile, I will be diving deeper into the game to find the most amazing combos and things that you can do with these cultures, and then I'll be back with more of these videos. Leave a thumbs up on that video if you enjoyed. Consider subscribing. I'd be delighted to have you. And also, there is a playlist link down there below leading to all the other Age of Wonders videos that I did so far. And a big thanks to all the supporters of this channel. I deeply appreciate your help. There's Patreon, PayPal, and Buy Me a Coffee as ways and means. If you are interested, I'd be super happy if you check them out. And if not, well, thanks for watching this video until the end. This is also deeply appreciated. I hope you have a nice day, and see you soon.